Speaking of having ads shoved down your throat, I just thought this was kind of interesting. The judge in the U.S. Department of Justice's antitrust case against Google is currently hearing closing arguments as to whether Google's market dominance has harmed the quality of search. Spoiler, yes. The heart of the DOJ's case is Google's deals with various companies ensuring that Google search would be the default on their platforms, in particular Google's deal with Apple. A witness revealed during this trial that Google pays Apple 36% of its search advertising revenue from Safari in order to remain the default search tool on the browser. In just 2022, this deal resulted in Google paying $20 billion to Apple. Android manufacturers typically get around 12% of this revenue for their own default agreements with Google, so 1/3 as much. This is not news necessarily, so the closing arguments are happening now, but a lot of this has come out earlier. But one of the things that struck me about this was that it is always interesting to me to see the shapes that Apple apologists, Apple loyalists, whatever you want to call them, fans, right? Fans. You shouldn't be a fan of anything. But that Apple fans will contort themselves into to frame Apple as a totally different kind of entity compared to the other big tech companies. And this one, what stood out to me about this was it reminded me of that conversation that we had a little while back about the VPN industry. And how sort of, how our comfort level is high enough to have VPN sponsors and talk about the benefits of VPN to our audience, but our comfort level is not high enough to run our own VPN and personally say, no, I understand that IP is downloading illicit, harmful material. It's affecting real people, real minors, and we're not going to give you that person's information. That's just beyond mine and Luke's comfort zone. We're not going to say no to that. So we're just not going to run a VPN, because you can't have a VPN that just decides sometimes to disclose its users' activities and sometimes doesn't. But it reminded me of that conversation, because I was looking at this going, how can Apple and Apple's users look at each other, across the table and go, I am so protective of your privacy. I care so much about it that it is central to basically all my product messaging. And for you to sit there and believe that while I am collecting $20 billion a year through Google's efforts to harvest your data and sell ads against that personalized collected data. I mean, Apple's conflict of interest here is so obvious and so clear and so brazen that I find it exhausting that it isn't obvious to everyone else. And I think that's become a bit of a problem for me. Like, I end up with people looking at my takes and kind of going like, yeah, Linus hates Apple, or he hates this, or he, whatever he thinks about something. And I think part of it is, I'm exhausted of having the same conversations over and over again. And I've said this before, and I guess I'll do it one more time. The thing that drives me most crazy about Apple is the utter hypocrisy of their behavior, that they will put a microsite up on their website about how much they're saving the planet as they actively send tens of thousands of working devices to a destroyer like Jeep, however you pronounce it, GEEP. There was a whole lawsuit that Apple, I think, ultimately dropped because they didn't like the publicity they were getting around pursuing these guys for ultimately not destroying this working hardware. It was a whole thing. This was a little while back. I'm not just a hater. This is not hate. This is looking at the pieces in motion, looking at the actions they're taking and going, is this not obvious to everyone? Like, you can still like Apple products. You still buy a fucking iPhone. I don't care. That's your money. You do whatever you want.
Just know what's happening.
But why do you insist? Why do you insist on not seeing it for what it is? And I don't know how to address it. Like, seeing the antitrust developments between the US government and Apple, and all the articles that are on sort of the usual news sites that kind of have that traditional article comment format. I read a lot of comments, not just on our own videos, not just on videos. A lot of the time I'll skim the article and I'll read the comments. I read a lot faster than I watch video though, so I usually will just read an article because I'm a pretty fast reader. But going through the articles, it's amazing. Even on communities where generally I have found that the readers are of above average savviness. Like Ars Technica, I would say, is an example of a site where, generally speaking, it's pretty hard to get upvoted if you're a complete fucking idiot. Like it just doesn't really happen compared to a site like The Verge is a more normie site, but still reasonably savvy compared to I don't know, that dumb one that we were showing all the AI comments on a little while. Actually, no, that one wasn't bad. But anyway, the point is, I would say Ars Technica is one that has a pretty high standard of viewership or readership. And I was going through one of the articles on this, and the number of people that were making the but my walled garden, I love it better in here argument just blew me away. Then have your walled garden.
You can choose those options.
Stay in it.
Yeah.
It's okay.
You can close the door.
Competition is good. That is a universal truth, and you will not be able to argue that point with any degree of success against anyone who isn't a complete NPC. Competition breeds innovation. It just does. And companies that are not forced to compete will abuse their... Okay, let's not say monopolistic, because that's a big part of the argument. Apple isn't a monopoly. They're not a monopoly. Look at that. You don't have to be a monopoly, mono. You don't have to be just one to engage in anti-competitive behavior. You can be a local... You could be a regional ISP that is stomping out even smaller competitors. You are still engaging in anti-competitive behavior, even if there's half a dozen other ISPs in the country. That's not the point, right? That there's just one. And it just blows me away how polarizing this is and how emotional people's arguments are about it when I just don't get it. Don't be a fan. Don't be a fan of Apple. Don't be a fan of Intel or Nvidia or Microsoft or any of these companies. I mean, look at the way the tech industry has handled layoffs lately. Have you seen the Supercharger team layoffs? They're just like, yeah, Tesla Supercharger teams. See you later.
Oof.
Nice knowing you.
I always like going to that website, layoffs.fyi. It's interesting.
Yeah, here, I'm going to your laptop.
Yeah. In 2024 alone, 279 tech companies have laid off 80,230 employees.
As soon as you're publicly traded, by definition, you can't have a soul.
Yeah. Yeah, it's brutal. You can, if you poke through this website for a while, you can... I don't know. I don't remember exactly how to do it. It's intuitive once you actually start using it, but there's a way to sort by like type of company, because it shows like fintech companies, all this other type of stuff in there, but you can narrow it down to different specifics, but it's a lot of people.
Avon Fox says, if we don't want fans, stop calling them Team Red, Team Blue, etc. That's a good point. And you know what? That's one of the sort of insidious, subtle ways that they do turn gamers against each other. Like, as far as I remember, AMD started that whole Team Red thing.
I think so.
I think that was back in the Bulldozer days when basically they didn't have any product worth buying, and all they could count on was selling to fans. And you know what? This is tough, right? Because if absolutely everybody bought only the objectively best product, companies would just cease to exist.
We'd go to monopolies instantly.
And so the fact that, you know, people that I would, no offense, but like laugh at behind closed doors who are buying these like objectively worse products for the same price, right? Like I'm sorry, but I think you're a clown. If you know that one thing is objectively better than the other one and you buy the worst one because it has a brand you like on it. I'm sorry, you're a clown.
I do think sometimes...
But they saved AMD. The fact that we have AMD
Yeah.
today is because absolute clowns were fans of a company and bought a brand instead of a product. I was like, you know what? Thank you. Thank you. I actually enjoy living in clown world, because if we had just Intel, we'd still have
I do think you're oversimplifying.
We'd still have 4 cores, Luke.
Because some people just don't care enough.
We'd still have 4 cores.
So they're not going to do the research. Something's just going to be on sale and they're like, whatever, I need a functioning computer. I don't really care that
And you
much.
know what? That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine.
And then other people might have...
But I didn't talk about that.
Other people might have subjective reasons why they like or dislike something, and other people might have reasons why they're doing an anything but purchasing
I can address
solution.
all of these.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so number 1, I wasn't talking about that. Out of ignorance, I will absolutely buy the wrong brand of drill bit.
Sure, yeah.
It happens. I don't have the time to research absolutely everything in my life, and I understand that some people, in fact, I'm one of the people who talks about this all the time. Like, we live in our little tech bubble where everything's obvious to us, you know, that this one is so much better than that one. How could anybody possibly buy a 4060 with only 8 gigs of VRAM, or, you know, whatever the thing we hate du jour is. You know, I talk about that all the time, how for most people, it's as simple as walking into a retail store and buying whatever the rep hands them that happens to be within their price range. I get that. So I'm not talking about people who just don't know. And as for your second one, I forget what it was. It was good, though. It was really good.
Okay. So there was ignorance.
Yeah.
There was...
Oh, just not caring.
Preference, I think it was.
No, that was the third one.
I thought the third one... I can't put that finger.
Yeah, the third one was the anything but verse.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so the second one. I'm sorry, but I just don't accept it with a computer processor. I can accept it with a water bottle because this is subjective.
We were talking about like everything though. It wasn't just CPUs we were talking about.
Okay, but I'm specifically talking about tech products right now though.
And when it comes down to CPUs, there might still be preference because you might use a certain program or something that performs better than the other thing.
But that's fine. That's still objective. I'm just saying that a CPU is not a subjective purchase.
But that comes down to potentially 2 products still being relevant.
In those days, it didn't.
I agree.
Yeah, that was clown days of AMD. There was if you paid full price for a bulldozer, you were willfully ignorant, basically.
Yeah,
like those were bad.
It was a rough time.
You couldn't even glance at the introduction of a review and not know that it was not dark times.
It was
or that it was dark times for AMD.
If you were in the tech industry back then, it was a sad time.
As for the anything but, I get it. There are definitely companies that I have taken a break from before, but I also think that that's kind of a
I know recently that there are people that have taken risks with purchasing decisions, especially in the GPU department, because of some of the things that NVIDIA's done. I don't necessarily think that that's super wrong.
And that's fair. But what I will say is don't get stuck in like a place of sort of blind hatred forever.
Yeah.
Because outside of,
employees are going to turn over, things are going to change.
Outside of very senior leadership, the company that you are buying from, if you're buying an AMD CPU today, for example, and I'm using AMD as an example for a reason because they have had a significant amount of turnover in the last decade. If you buy an AMD CPU today, you are effectively buying it from a completely different company from who they were 10, especially like if you go back like 15 years ago.
100%.
Functionally, it's like they're the company of Theseus, right? Like almost every working part has been replaced in that time.
A lot of companies are that way though.
So holding grudges against a brand is entirely silliness. You should absolutely consider anything they've done recently. And if they have a long history of absolutely evil behavior, then that clearly is a deep-rooted cultural issue. Like if someone were to say, look, I'll buy anything other than something made by Nestle. All right. Fair enough. Because, whether you want to make an argument around the privileged position that they're in today at all is because of the awful behavior that they have paid zero reparations for, or whether you want to look at their more recent actions, you'll have a strong argument for why you just shouldn't buy anything made by Nestle. But I think you'll be hard pressed to find a similar example in the tech space.
Nestle was a good call out though. I like it.
Yeah, well, they're just the most obviously evil company other than what, like maybe Chiquita?
Who's that?
That's the banana company.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Don't forget about the Coke murders. Never forget the Coca-Cola murders.
There's some wild stuff in the food industry. It's actually nuts.
Yeah, they literally don't even, their defense was not even that they didn't do it.
It didn't happen here.
Their defense was that it was not within the prosecution's jurisdiction.
You know what they did?
Yes, unfortunately. There's also Lay's, I think.
Don't forget about the palm oil industry in general. Like literally palm oil. Actually destroying entire nations.
Sick.
But hey, at least it's what was the argument for? It was like lower calorie or something, healthier or something, natural something. I forget. But yeah. Sorry for bringing up palm oil.
It feels like some like Portal stuff. It's like it's lower calories for the ones who are still alive.
Yeah, exactly. Like, dude, this is one of those things where it's like I am not about whataboutism. Like, whataboutism is a super weak argument. When someone says, hey, you did a bad thing, and they point back and they go, well, what about? There are valid cases for it.
Yeah,
if someone is engaging in hypocrisy, there's nothing I think that I dislike more than hypocrisy. Like, if I'm calling out Luke for his,
Get me.
I don't know, his big nose.
Perfect.
Right?
I like it.
Actually, that's a bad example because it's an inherent trait. But my point was just that my nose is bigger than his. So if I were calling, oh, come on.
I don't look at these things. I genuinely don't.
Literally royal.
I can't see myself on the
deluxe.
side.
I like to describe it as deluxe.
Nose prime.
Yeah.
Nice. I like it.
Or whatever it is. If I am actively engaging in the same behavior or the same behavior but worse, that is absolutely a valid defense. That is not whataboutism. That is you're being a fucking hypocrite and you actually need to sort out your own shit before you start talking about anyone else's.
Yeah.
So that's a completely different thing. But in general, I'm not about whataboutism. But I also do think that in the gaming and in the tech industry, we tend to end up with kind of tunnel vision on the things that are happening within our space. I think a great example of this was the principled technologies benchmarking scandal from Intel. Do you even remember this?
I do. Yeah.
Basically, someone at Intel fucked up some charts and they got published even though they were obviously not right, and they caused a very unfavorable comparison to AMD that was just obviously not right. I looked at that whole situation, I went, yeah, someone fucked up.
There was issues everywhere.
And and whoever they are high up enough that they can cover their butts.
And then trying to deal with it, they did a pretty bad job.
And legal probably came in and said, look, if we say anything, we open ourselves up to a bunch of legal liability because we acknowledge the error, which would mean that AMD would have grounds that we have effectively admitted that we are guilty of doing this, when in reality, it was probably just some dumbass like on the marketing team that didn't realize that this was a problem. Because I promise you, none of the technical people would have
I thought there was
known.
more stuff like a test bench hidden under a table and all these other things.
No. It was just,
I don't remember. Maybe this was some other thing.
It was a small enough thing that it could have easily been coordinated by like one or two people who just
I remember that part.
Who were just dumb.
Sure.
Just plain dumb.
It's been way too long.
And probably didn't listen to any of the smarter people who absolutely know better. I mean, that's the thing about organizations. As an organization can do something that was actually just a couple of complete fucking idiots.
Or just like a wicked miscommunication.
Or a wicked miscommunication. I don't think that one was a miscommunication.
I don't think so either. I'm just saying like, there's a lot of ways for this to happen.
I think it was someone with too much power and who was arrogant and who didn't understand. I think it was someone who's being paid more than their understanding of the technical details of the product is what I will say. And but the way that people kind of blew up about this and the kind of conspiracy theories that were spawned from it, I was like, look, man, you guys never heard of Hanlon's razor? You know Hanlon's razor, obviously, right?
I didn't know it was Hanlon.
Yeah, never attribute to malice what can be adequately explained by stupidity.
Yeah, it is Hanlon. Cool.
Yeah,
I know.
Hanlon's razor. And I never got anyone from Intel to confirm my version of the story, but what I did get was I got on a call where I said, look, tell you what, how about this? Tell me that what I'm saying is wrong. And I finished telling my story of how I kind of assumed it happened.
And then just no one really responded?
And then, well, this was one person that was talking to me off the record because they were just like, look, I don't want people thinking that our whole department is like evil people. Yeah. And they were basically just like, well, this has been a nice call, and I'll talk to you another time. Because it's just obvious. If you understand the human elements that go into something like that, it's easier to pick it apart, because the idea that anyone is organized enough to have coordinated that as like a campaign, I mean, it's silly, right? Like it's.
I think just while we're on it, I think Hanlon's razor has a dangerous side of it, which is where if you start overly making people innocent, you make yourself very vulnerable, because there is a lot of malice.
And that is true. And you know what? I have multiple times in my life ended up in a bad situation because I have a tendency to attribute to misunderstanding as my default. But you know what? I just don't think I can live my life the other way.
No, I think
and I'm usually right.
I agree, and it's defaulting to malice, you're not gonna have any friends and your life's gonna suck. But you just do also have to be aware that there are malicious people out there.
Absolutely.
And you can't just like be blind to it forever. I want to show this real quick before we get off the topic by tangenting too hard somehow. That if you've heard all this and you still might be into the whole teaming thing, you can jump on AMDFanstore.com and get yourself some $8 AMD team.
Should say AMD clown
tags.
Team.
I don't know, like
red nose team.
Nice. In the defense of the cycling jersey, I'm pretty sure Intel has some jerseys as well, don't they? From something?
Oh, probably.
Yeah. Nice. They don't have that many products. A $50 waist pack. $60 waist pack, sorry.
I mean...
they have quite a few products, actually.
At least,
a gaming chair?
Oh, wow. I was about to say, at least their worthless swag is priced like worthless swag. Like their sunglasses were like $10. But like, man, that's a tool backpack, though. That's not just AMD. That almost feels like they produced a bunch of them for staff and they're just like making them available.
Computer backpack. I thought it was commuter.
I don't know if you're going to find the exact same one. Is it that second one? Oh, no, the zipper goes across like that. Oh, is it the 12 custom? Okay, well, 12 of them for $14.06.
Why is that?
Staples promotional products. Nice.
Right.
Laptop backpacks. All right, Luke doing the real research here.
I want to find it. Is it an older model?
Got an investigative journalist here. Luke, come on, let's cheer him on. Luke.
I don't think I'm going to find it. It's not here.
Shop.
It's an older model.
Shop. All right.
Older model, man.
That's fine. I'm over it.
Oh, well.
I took away your screen sharing privileges.
That's fine. Yeah, I didn't find it. I failed. I'm still looking.
I don't even remember what our topic was, but basically don't be fans of, like, especially public companies.
Yeah,
please.
if you're gonna act like it personally, just don't act like it publicly.